before the fight, because it feels like Eubank is really just winding Conor up as much as possible, so he exerts all of his sort of frustration out. I don't know if you watched the Piers Morgan interview, and Conor Benn actually was, you say he talks from the heart. He was like, I actually do wish you and your dad get along, because that was very sad. And Eubank didn't want anything to do with it. He just wanted it back into a rough fight.
I mean, Chris is just trying to control the whole narrative. Conor is a great guy. Chris is a great guy. I like them both. They're both very different. A little bit reminds me slightly of Carl Froch and George Groves, two totally different personalities. I don't know if you spend much time with either, but I spent so much time with Carl and so much time with George, and I like them both very much. And now they've got a sort of fun friendship after years of hatred. I remember commentating with Carl in Vegas, and he just wouldn't. George was over in one of the press rooms, and he just wouldn't go near him. And I was like, Carl, come on, it's just ridiculous. I'd go and see George, and George go, is he not coming over again? And it was just so silly. And we sort of thawed the ice, actually, on a Sky night. We got both of them together in studio, and now they get on, but they are different people, very different people. They're never going to hang out together like as best chums, because they're just different. And I think that with Chris and Conor, and a bit like Senior and Nigel, they're not going to hang out together. They have different pathways in life. And I think Michael Watson has helped bring, who's a great, wonderful man, Michael, and just celebrated his 60th birthday. He's doing a mile of the marathon. He's for the Brain and Spine Foundation with Peter Hamlin and the team. He's fantastic, Michael. And I think one of the reasons that Chris and Nigel, Chris Senior and Nigel are better now is because of Michael. And I think that's great. I love seeing that. Barrera and Morales hated each other for years, but eventually their wives put them together and said, this is nonsense. And the four of them go out for dinners now, which is great, because they've shared their souls in the ring, and they've given us so much entertainment. It's wonderful that they can find I love that at the end, don't you, when the bell goes and fighters embrace like the respect after all the sort of nonsense beforehand, and they've got to get themselves into a way of, I'm going to win this fight, nothing, but one is going to lose or likely to, and I think that it's great to see that sort of respect afterwards. And I think with Chris Jr. and Conor at the moment, they're in that high sort of pressurized pre-fight mode where training's tough. They're trying to make weight, their last spars, all of that. So when you get onto a Piers Morgan show, he's probing them with wonderful questions and trying to sort of get a great hour of entertainment television-wise. Obviously, they're going to react in different ways, but I fundamentally think they're both good guys. Chris lives his life, and Conor lives his life, and they're very, very different. But listen, as a broadcaster, as an interviewer, as somebody around the boxing world, I love it when I see both of them. I think they're dynamite on camera, and they're great in the ring too. So look, I wish them the very best, the pair of them. I think Spurs will be absolutely on heat. I think it will be. I mean, it's a wonderful stadium. We've been there before with AJ and Usyk won. Obviously, Tyson's fought there as well. But I got to know Daniel Levy and the staff pretty well. Back when they fought, AJ lost for the first time against Usyk, and it's an incredible stadium. I'm a big Liverpool fan, so I love it when Liverpool beat them there. And I get to enjoy the stadium too. But no, it's a great home actually for boxing. Wembley's wonderful, but Spurs is also good. So I think it's going to be phenomenal on the night. And I can't tell you how many people have asked me to go and get tickets, and I don't think there's any left. It's that sort of an event. So. It'll be brilliant to be there for DAZN and commentating on it, and I can't wait for it. And ultimately, it is all the fun in the games, but these two know how to sell a fight, and it's great that the casual fans drop in 2 or 3 times a year. We need to keep that going for the big fights, because we need people talking boxing. And as I said earlier, boxing's in a wonderful place. It's at a fantastic spot now. Young fighters are coming through. The heavyweights are just rolling. You could take almost any of them out of that magic pot, put them together, and we're going to get a good fight. And great matchmaking will mean great fights ahead. And I love what His Excellency Turki Al-Sheikh has done. He's got everybody working with each other. It means that fights are going to be made, fighters get paid more money, and fans get better quality matchups. It's a win-win. How long it will go on for, who knows? Boxing, I've seen it through the years, Sean, how it changes, how sort of Don King's hot, then Bob Arum's hot, then in comes Al Heyman, and all sorts of different things have happened in boxing. But at the moment, His Excellency Turki Al-Sheikh is the main man. And it's good to see a lot of big events still happening in Britain. It's great going to Saudi. The Americans have still got phenomenal fighters, Terence Crawford and the wonderful night at Times Square when we've got Devin Haney and Ryan Garcia and Teofimo Lopez, and you've got Boots Ennis fighting coming up. And so it's alive and well. And I'd like to see a sort of bit of a resurrection in America. And I think that's what they're going to aim for with HBO and Showtime sort of moving out of it. I think they really want to push the States again. But British boxing, I mean, people saying it's broken. British boxing is absolutely flying. It's terrific. And it's great because, as you say, you were inspired. I was inspired by the Barry McGuigans. Tommy Hearn's my hero. And now I see the young who are inspired to come on and they want to follow in the footsteps of AJ and Fury, or they want to follow in the footsteps of your Amir Khans, your Ricky Hattons, your Kell Brooks. It's great times. And especially for the women too, Lauren Price coming through now, and that big fight made with Michaela Mayer, and you've seen Katie just, the flag bearer for women's boxing, and Tasha and Terry Harper, 3-weight champion, defending her world title on the big show in Doncaster in May. It's great fights, great nights ahead, and great time to be in boxing.
Look, Adam, you're absolutely like an encyclopedia, and somebody who does podcasts and speaks on stages himself, public speaker, etc. can only be in awe the way you sort of conduct yourself as well. Everything is like a storytelling. It's like a process you go through, this way, that way, what it actually is, what other people are thinking. I want to find out what made Adam Smith. I mean, did you always want to be a commentator? Was you always good at talking? Where did this start from? Talk to me back. Let's go back in time. And you're 9 or 10 years old. What's happening? What's going on?
I think there's two words that have carried me through life. One is passion, and the other one is sport. I'm a sports nut. I love pretty much every sport. My family will tell you, I could watch anything, whether it's in no order. Tennis is probably my favorite sport. Boxing's my business.
Really?
It's a strange one to say, and I love boxing and fighters to the core. But watching sport, I love watching tennis. I love football. I'm a massive Liverpool fan. Have been since I was 4 or 5 years old. My kids, 2 of my 3 kids are. I love everything: snooker, darts, rugby, cricket, golf. I just everything. I love sport, racing. There's something about. I think it was because I was not very good at it. I think it was because I was always trying to get into teams and never quite made it, or I'd get into the B's or C's. I'd never quite make that sort of team. I would be 12th man on the cricket pitch. I was always sort of missing out, and so I guess I got quite good at talking about sport and watching it. And I says if all my friends were better sports people than I was better at talking about sport than them. My mother's family, quite a theatrical family. My dad's in retail. So where did it all come from? I was very shy as a kid. I had friends, but I was very shy. Got bullied a little bit at school, which was tough. And I think I escaped into both the theatrical and sports world quite a lot. Sport was massive for me. So when I was about 9 or 10, I bought a dictaphone. So one of those little tape recorders. And I used to practice on the dictaphone or in front of a mirror, being a commentator. So I guess I think my mum wanted me to be an actor. But again, I acted a lot at school and at uni, and I did drama at uni, but I was not very good. I was definitely not as good as everyone else who was there doing it. So, but I thought I did love talking about sport. So I think it was always I always wanted to do it, whether it was ever going to, because at that time there was like John Motson, Barry Davis on the football, Dan Maskell at the tennis, boxing was Harry or Reg, Ian Darke. There were very few people who did it. So people were like, well, how can you as BBC, ITV, Sky was just coming through, just an embryonic company, really. They're like, so how do you go about doing it? And that was the hard part. And that was the part that I wasn't going to say or wasn't going to take a no to. And I think that's the message, I think, for anyone who wants to do this. You've got to be passionate, you've got to be dedicated, and you've got to have a huge amount of resilience, because a lot of people say no. I commentated into the dictaphone. It wasn't just boxing. I mean, my heroes were Kenny Dalglish as a footballer, Sammy Lee, the Liverpool players. I looked up to John McEnroe. I loved... who else I love in tennis? I love, oh God, so many. Monica Seles. There's so many tennis players I adored. In cricket, David Gower was my hero. So yeah, Barry McGuigan and Tommy Hearns probably. David Gower at cricket. I loved Jockey Wilson on the hockey. I loved Alex Hurricane Higgins, and then in later life, Ronnie O'Sullivan. I think you can see what the sort of the geniuses I like, the maverick geniuses, the Gowers, so gifted, but then used to sort of get out to weird, why was he, come on. I love the stories. I love the Kenny Dalglish, the magician, and then going on to become a manager. I love following journeys. I think that's the key. I loved following people. And so it was any sport. It didn't matter whether I was going to be a football commentator, a boxing commentator, a tennis commentator. I just wanted to be a sports commentator. And I went to a very academic school. And my sort of peers there were all going to go into the city or into George Osborne was in my year, the former chancellor. So obviously he told me, I said to him one day when we were sitting around, I said, what are you going to do? Because he was talking about politics. He was a very good debater. I said, what are you going to do? What are you going to be? And he goes, I'm going to be prime minister. And I said, oh, wow, that's a pretty big. He said, what are you going to do? I said, I'm going to be a sports commentator. I said, I'll tell you what, let's see who gets there first. Yeah. And when I became a sports commentator, I dropped him a note because he'd only made chancellor. He never became prime minister. But no, I mean, look, he obviously did incredibly well in politics. But I didn't want to do that. I remember going around the careers fair at school and thinking, I don't want to go in the army. I don't want to be in medicine. I don't want to be an accountant. I don't want to do any of it. I want to be a sports commentator. How do I do it? And the way I did it was I wrote a lot of letters. I wrote to John Motson. I went to see him for a few minutes. I tried to be around people. I wrote so many letters and got so many rejections, but I had a name on it and I just went to see them for a chat. People were fantastic to me and, they encouraged me. My grandfather's best friend, I don't know if you know horse racing well, but the two great commentators were Peter O'Sullivan on television and Peter Bromley on radio. And I got an early chance to be in Peter Bromley's commentary booth at Ascot. And he had these big field binoculars. And I was fascinated as a sort of 12, 13-year-old boy looking at him and thinking, how does he remember all these horses' names? And he had this sort of color chart and there was a big sort of field of 30 horses and all this. And I was just mesmerized. Honestly, Sean, I was thinking, how does he do it? And he got these big binoculars and he was going, and they're coming round the final bend. And I used to do this when I was a kid, before my voice had broken. I was really good at the Grand National. I'd be, and Corbière on the far side, and here comes Hello Dandy. And for me, it was all about that excitement. So I was copying him and trying to be like him and in awe of him. And I guess, I just wanted to do it from a young age. And I went to a local newspaper, the Ham and High. I did a few articles from them. I eventually went through university. I realized that acting wasn't going to happen, and it was all about getting into TV. I went after university. I did a time in America. I did university here at Warwick. Every one of the guys there will tell you then all I wanted to be was a sports commentator, and now they tell me now it's that they've done all sorts of things in their careers, but they're like, you did what you wanted to do from day one and you weren't going to stop. And I've never said I'm a good commentator or whatever. I tell you what I do though, Sean, I put so much into it. I love it. I'm passionate. I respect fighters so much. Every one of them that gets in the ring. And look, I found boxing. I worked in news before. I worked at CNN in Washington. I worked at ITN in London. I worked a bit at NBC, and I ended up sort of banging the doors down, getting into Sky Sports, and Vic Wakeling, the head of sports there, and Mark Sharman. They gave me an opportunity to do some voice work. They said, what sport do you like? I said, everything. They said, we've got a space on the boxing team at the moment. I said, that'll do nicely. I love boxing. And that was it. I fell in love with all the fighters. I got Barry McGuigan walked through the door within a few months, and my boss said to me, oh, you'll be working with Barry around the country doing previews and working with fighters. And I was thinking, oh my God, Barry McGuigan's like my hero. And then someone said, oh, and can you call David Gower? We need him in. And I was calling my hero. And still, when I walk past David Gower in a corridor, at, whether it was at Sky, when I see him at Lord's, when I see Barry McGuigan around the ring, I'm that kid. They're still on my walls. So I'm still a fan. And I think that's what it is. I always wanted to be a commentator. Ian Darke was an amazing mentor to me at Sky. Colin Hart was an amazing mentor to me in the journalistic world. Bob Mee helped me, Glenn McCrory, Jim Watts, so many in those early days at Sky. And I've worked with some phenomenal co-commentators. I had a bit of fun on the darts for a while. I enjoyed commentating on darts, which was great. It was almost like that was my holiday job, and my normal job is boxing, so that was good fun. And I didn't commentate like I really knew darts. I commentated as a fan. So yeah, look, I love it. I've had a go at horse racing. I've had a bit of a go at football, tennis. Look, I'm a boxing commentator, and yeah, I think I know where I love. And when I took time out when I was ill, I didn't know what I was going to come back and do. But I think boxing is a sport that when you're inside it, it grips you. It's unpredictable. It is the Wild West at times, which I think why Dana and Turkey are coming in to try and change certain aspects to it. And it can always change. And we love improvements and investment in boxing. But I think what we do all come back to, and Eddie will say this and Frank will say this, because I've worked with them, Frank for 15 odd years, Eddie for 10 years. You talk to each other on the phone. You want things to happen. He wants his agenda. As a broadcaster, you want yours. But ultimately, you love what you do. And I think by doing boxing commentary, I could commentate. I could work in a sport which was a bit like the theatre, like my love of acting and TV and film. I could work in it where there was always a story going on, and there's always something happening. So 24/7, something's going on. Like something will be going on right now as we're doing this out there, that as soon as we get out, I'm thinking, okay, that's taking a little twist, or, oh my word, I've got to look at, is that fighter going to go there? Or is that show still on? Or there's always something happening. So I think for me as a storyteller and someone passionate about life and passionate about sport, boxing is the answer, because really it's a sport that can go like that. It's a sport of life and death. And unfortunately, I have dealt with the really, really dark side of boxing, the sad side, losing James Murray a year after I started boxing at Sky, and having to go and see his mum and talk to his family about boxing after he sadly passed. Tragic. But I remember his mum sitting there saying boxing saved James from the drug-infested streets of Glasgow. And, he died doing what he loved, and a tragedy. And then Spencer Oliver surviving, and I was really close to him and seeing his build up. And now, 30 odd years later, he's unbelievable. He's everywhere, all around the broadcasting world. And he's not bitter. Neither's Michael Watson bitter. They're not resentful ever. They love the opportunity to do it, and they do it all over again and twice on Sundays. And that is the magic of boxing. And when people say, oh, it does brain damage. Oh, it's dangerous. It should be banned. Oh, there's too many drugs in it, or whatever. I go back and I say, talk to Spencer Oliver, talk to Michael Watson, talk to Nick Blackwell, talk to these guys who have gone through really difficult times, and I'm never brave enough to go into a ring, but I had to deal with cancer. And only after that, Sean, did I really, truly understand what it's like to be at rock bottom, what it's like to maybe the fighters who've lost or who've been injured or something, and they've got to find a way to come back through life, through dealing with mental health, through dealing with a different physical change to them maybe. And I have so much respect, more respect now. I had so much before I had my illness for fighters and for sports people who I love, but since, almost double it. And that's why I will always say I am grateful for every opportunity, and will only do this because of the boxers, because of the brave men and women that get into that squared circle and they do it. It's their life. And they're putting that on the line for our entertainment, for our viewing, for our enjoyment. And wow, it's an unbelievable sport if you look at it like that. And there's so many characters in it, and it is a sport that sort of drags you in. I remember taking one of my daughters to a fight. Both of them, they've all come. My 3 kids have come to watch Katie. We're pretty close to Katie Taylor. So they've all been to watch Katie, but they're not big boxing fans. My son's a big football fan, and my daughters, yeah, they'll watch it, they'll come. But my eldest daughter came a while back to a show in Sheffield, and she was introduced to John Pegg, who's a great boxing man, one of the great boxing men from the Midlands. And he said to Jessamy, he said, what are you doing here? And she said, oh, I like the boxing. She said, but he said, well, what are you doing with your life? She said, well, I'm about to start uni and I'm going to study criminology. You know, I'm really fascinated by people that commit crime and, you know, and look into the sort of forensic, what makes a thief, what makes it someone murder someone, you know, difficult stuff, right? But she's very fascinated, as we all are a bit, I think, by Crime Watch and all those sort of programs. And you know, she watched all sort of things. And John said, well, you're in the right place, because when God dropped lunatics into the world, he chucked them into boxing. And I think there's something to be said about that. We're all a bit nuts in the boxing world. I think we've all got good hearts, and I think we all love the entertainment and we love the ups and downs. But yeah, we're all slightly crazy. You've got to have a screw missing to get in the ring in the first place. But I think sort of probably got to have a screw missing to be a commentator too, because we work mad hours. We're all in. We get very emotional as well. You can't on mic. It's very difficult, but sometimes you lose the plot. I've done it before when Danny Williams won the British heavyweight title with one arm. Unbelievable. When Diego Corrales somehow got off the floor twice against Jose Luis Castillo. When AJ got off the floor to win at Wembley. These sort of moments. I bumped into a guy who said, oh, Scott Dixon sends his best. You might not know Super Scott Dixon. He had a fight with Derek Roach in the Midlands for a British welterweight title many years ago. I mean, they got off the floor so many times. It was extraordinary what they went through. Alex Arthur and Michael Gomez, Matt Macklin and Jamie Moore. That's at British level. Mm. There are so many incredible stories and gladiators. Alex Arthur dropped me a message the other day. He said, me and you should work together. He knows it, Alex Arthur. He's great. There's a ton of them out there. And the Jamie Moores who you see go on and do real well. You know, my wingman, Johnny Nelson, who I spent so many years with at Sky, and just seeing what he's got out of boxing beyond. It's an area that fascinates me, Sean, life after. And I just want these fighters to be happy, to be healthy, to be structured. They've got to have another job. They've got to do something different. They can't just sit around when they retire at 35, 40. They've got the whole lives in front of them. And the happier ones are the ones that keep working, keep themselves ticking over, and are not bitter. Because if you're bitter and resentful, you know, I could be bitter about my cancer and say, why did it happen to me? But you know what? I was saved. I shouldn't be here. I'm lucky. So I'm grateful for my stoma. I'm grateful to be sat here today. And I'll never take anything for granted ever again. And it also makes me think, hey, if someone doesn't want me to commentate or they don't want me to do something and they do say no, like they did a lot when I was a kid trying to break through, I'll be okay. I'll be all right, because I'm just happy to be here. I'm happy to be alive. And I'm very lucky to be back in the boxing world that I adore. People have been amazing to me. And, you know, you don't know this, but a lot of people don't know this, but people came through the doors of my hospital I was in 4 hospitals, Sean, 4 hospitals over 3.5 painful months. And I'll tell you, those people that came through, you know, I had messages from Frank and Kala and Nisse. Eddie banged the doors down he was there on my bedside when I was in a real bad way. Ben Shalom came and saw me. I had AJ messaging me one night, like through the night, getting me through one of those nights. Tyson Fury, Katie, I can't tell you. And that's the big names. Dillian, Derek, I can't tell you how many people, when it was so rough, reached out to me. A lot of people didn't even know my situation, but those who did, and those who didn't, when they knew it, they were like, Adam, it's just so good to see you happy and alive and well. I am so grateful for the support and love I had. I'm so grateful for the support I've had since the DAZN announcement, and that I'm back on the mic with Barry and with Darren and with Carl and with the team. I'm so grateful for that opportunity. I loved Sky. Cut me in half and I bled Sky. I was at Sky for 30 years, and 95% of it I loved. And at the end, it was the right time to go. It was the right time to move on. I had a year out almost. I needed it. I was mentally and physically broken. I needed a break. I got it. I love my Sky friends. I miss them, but I needed to move on, and I'm doing fun and cool things now. I'm balancing it with my family. I'm working at a food bank. I'm doing some cool stuff. And you know what? I'm really enjoying life, Sean. I'm really grateful for every day. And instead of waking up and stressed and like, oh my God, what's Eddie done today? Constantly sort of, oh my God, can I deal with today? And having your 3 hours sleep. Now, if I have 3-4 hours sleep, I get up and I'm like, okay, I'm a bit tired, but I'm here. It's another day. I've got a big tube that's attached to me at night. It's not pleasant. It's not easy, but that stoma keeps me alive. And hey, I am so grateful to the doctors that saved me. I didn't think I'd get through. There were times where I was just broken. I lost 4 stone in weight. I was looking at myself in the mirror thinking, I cannot do this. I can't fight. I'm not a fighter. I'm a lover, not a fighter. I can't fight. I couldn't go in a ring, but I had to fight for my life, and it was really hard. And I guess I'm just really grateful that I'm through that. And hey, look, I have my scans, and I don't know what the future holds. None of us do. What I do know is that for today, I'm really happy, and tomorrow I'll deal with. But yeah, I feel very grateful to be here.
Mm-hmm. So a lot of people don't know a lot about certain cancers, and I would love, for you to talk us through some of the things that you went through in a little bit more detail. I can resonate with you here a lot because my mum's going through cancer right now, and unfortunately they found out stage 4, which is already broke stomach lining in the fat tissues. CT scans, I didn't know what PET scans were before. I didn't know any of these things, and then chemo to push things back. She's past the stage where you could even do an operation to cut it out. So it's like on borrowed time. So every day is gratitude and
Absolutely.
giving thanks.
I'm sorry to hear that, but also you're right. Every day is very important. The one thing is, Sean, is that we all are born and we all die. So, and there's ways of thinking about it. You can think you're invincible. You can be really frightened of it, but ultimately, going through that with your mum, and as I said, I'm really sorry to hear that. And it's about accepting and enjoying what time you do have, because as I said, all of us are not going to be here. It's a short window. I lost a couple of friends, one in my 20s. He died in a fire, and I lost another friend who was hit by a driver when he was riding a bike. Horrendous injuries, accidents, horrendous horror stories, terrible, tragic. So yeah, look, you don't know which way life's going to go. And I think that, the time you have with your mum, just enjoy every moment. And and I hope that she's got what she wanted out of life up to this stage. I think that's another way of looking at it. I knew Colin Hart had terminal cancer a few weeks before he died. And we spent time talking about what he thought about his life, and the fact that he was at a stage where he was very pragmatic, and he said, I've enjoyed my career at work, and I've loved my family life. And he was very, very accepting of it. And I think that's, the only thing and only place you can be at. It's tough.
So Adam, they say, on the news, it said that potentially 1 in every 2 of us is going to have cancer at some sort of stage. What was it like first of all, what sort of symptoms did you have? Because yours was bladder cancer.
Yeah.
And second of all, what was it like when you got that sort of news? And, how did you move forward through that journey?
I didn't. Yeah. Where do I start? I first of all, I didn't know what bladder cancer was, but that came down the line. I started feeling a bit, just not quite myself. And I put it down to stress at work and just mentally getting tired. But I'd never been ill. So I'd never had a day off, maybe half a day off. I had some heart palpitations when I was younger, maybe took half. I'd never been ill at Sky or at school or anything. I ran away from doctors. I never went, don't want to go to a GP. I didn't want to know what was in my body, because I guess I was I gave up drinking a long time ago. I don't smoke. I've never smoked ever. So, and I keep myself fairly fit. But of course, the stress of being in the boxing world, running around, and, as we talked about it, the few hours sleep, all that sort of stuff, of course, it can build up and you can eat badly and all that sort of stuff. But I went to the gym. I was